Miss Edna's story spread beyond the company. Other businesses noticed the change in her workers, how happy and loyal they had become. Soon, more clients came. Her companies grew even bigger, but this time, Edna handled success differently. She listened more. She thanked her staff openly. She gave back to her community, building free schools and clinics in memory of her parents. She set up scholarships for young girls who dreamed of becoming leaders too. One afternoon, as she stood looking out of her office window, the same spot where she once watched people with cold, judging eyes, Miss Edna smiled deeply. Mr. Anthony's words still echoed in her heart. Your inside will take over your outside look. Now, her inside was full of kindness, and it showed in every smile, every decision, and every life she touched. And for the first time in a very long time, Miss Edna was truly happy. It had been a year since the dark days when Miss Edna's life nearly crumbled before her eyes. The company was stronger now. Workers smiled freely as they passed each other in the halls. Laughter occasionally floated through the once tense building. Clients returned with trust. New investors showed interest. Peace, now promoted to senior administrator, often watched Edna from a distance and marveled at the change. But even with the sunshine outside, deep inside Edna's heart, a storm was brewing again. That evening, as she packed up to leave the office, Miss Peace walked into Edna's office with a worried look. "Ma," she said softly, "a man is here to see you. He says it's urgent." "Who is it?" Edna asked, puzzled. "He says his name is Mr. Collins." The name hit Edna like cold water. Collins. The man who stole from her company. The man who destroyed her South Africa company. The man she had sworn to find and destroy. "Send him in," Edna said sharply, her heart beating hard against her ribs. The door opened slowly. A tall, lean man stepped in. His once smooth skin was rough now, his expensive clothes replaced by worn-out jeans and a faded shirt. His eyes held no pride, only regret. He fell to his knees. "Miss Edna, please, forgive me." The room was silent except for the faint ticking of the wall clock. "You have got to come in here," Edna said coldly, standing up. "You stole from me. You destroyed everything my parents built in South Africa. Why shouldn't I call the police right now?" Tears filled Collins' eyes, still on his knees. "I was greedy and stupid. But after I betrayed you, everything I touched turned to ashes. I lost everything. Money, friends, my health. Nothing good stayed with me. I had to come back. To confess. To ask for your forgiveness. I'm not asking for your money. I'm asking for peace." Edna stared at him for a long, hard moment. Old Edna would have called security and dragged him out into the streets without a second thought. New Edna didn't know what to do. Her heart fought her mind. Her change is working for her. Finally, she spoke. "You hurt me, Collins. You hurt my staff. You brought shame to my family's name. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting." But, she paused. "I forgive you. Not for your sake. But mine." Collins wept. Right there on the marble floor. Miss Peace, standing by the door, wiped tears from her own eye. "But listen carefully," Edna said, pointing to Mr. Collins. "You will never work here. You will never enter this building again. Go build a new life somewhere else. Do better." Yes, Ma. Thank you. Thank you," Collins sobbed, bowing low. As he left the office, a heavy weight lifted from Edna's shoulders. She had closed an old wound, finally. The afternoon sun poured gently through the wide windows of Edna's office, casting golden patterns across the polished floor. Miss Edna sat at her desk, signing off on a new partnership proposal. There was a lightness to her hand, a peace in her heart that had been missing for so long. A soft knock at the door interrupted her walk. Miss Peace peeped in with a bright smile. "Ma, you have a visitor," she said. "You'll want to see him." Before Edna could ask who it was, the door opened wider, and there he stood. Mr. Anthony. Her old mentor. The man who once walked out of her office heartbroken and disappointed. He looked older now, but his eyes still held that same gentle wisdom. He wore a simple, well-pressed native attire, and in his hands, he held a small carved box. For a moment, Edna froze, emotions flooding her. She rose quickly, rushing towards him. "Mr. Anthony," her voice trembled. "You're here." He smiled, the deep lines on his face softening. "My daughter," he said warmly. "I have been hearing the news, the good news. I had to come and see for myself." They hugged, an embrace that melted the last pieces of guilt Edna still carried. They sat together, side by side like father and daughter. Mr. Anthony looked around the office approvingly, the relaxed atmosphere, the laughter echoing faintly from the hallways, the pictures on the wall showing charity events and smiling children. "You have changed, Edna," he said, his voice low but firm. "And not just outside. Inside. You are now the leader your father dreamed you would be." Tears welled up in Edna's eyes, but she blinked them away quickly. "I failed once, sir," she said quietly. "I don't deserve this forgiveness." He shook his head slowly. "Failure is not the end, my daughter. It is often the beginning of wisdom. The tree that survives the storm is stronger at the roots. You went through your own storm, and you chose to grow." He leaned closer, his voice dropping into a confidential whisper. "But never forget, Edna my daughter, leadership is not about power. It's about service. About lifting others when they fall. About being patient when it's easier to be harsh. About seeing with the heart, not just the eyes." He opened the small box he brought and handed it to her. Inside was a simple, beautiful pen. On the side, it was engraved. "Lead with grace." Edna touched it reverently, overcome by emotion. "I give you this," Mr. Anthony said, "because every signature you make, every decision you take, should be a reminder. Grace builds what anger destroys. Love builds what fear tears down." She nodded, unable to speak, clutching the pen tightly. "I am proud of you, Edna," he said, standing to leave. "Your parents would be proud too." She stood as well, tears freely flowing now. "Thank you, sir. For not giving up on me. For seeing something in me, even when I didn't see it myself." He smiled once more, placed a hand gently on Edna's shoulder, and said, "Keep leading with grace, my daughter. The world needs more leaders like you." And with that, Mr. Anthony walked out of the office, his step steady, his heart light. For a long time after he left, Edna sat quietly at her desk, the pen resting against her chest. The sun bathed her office in a warm, golden glow, as if heaven itself was smiling. She knew now. Her journey wasn't just about rebuilding her father's company. It was about building people. Building lives. Building legacy. And she would do it with grace. The transformation of Edna's company was undeniable. But the greater work was happening inside the people. Every morning, Edna arrived early, her presence calm and warm. She greeted the cleaners, the drivers, the junior staff, each by name. No one was invisible to her anymore. And the staff noticed. Especially those who once worshipped the old Miss Edna, the proud, distant queen who ruled by fear. Among them was Sandra, the marketing manager. Young, sharp, ambitious, and full of herself. Just like Edna once was. One afternoon, Sandra barged into a meeting, late and unapologetic. She dismissed the junior staff's ideas with a wave of her hand and spoke with a tone sharp enough to cut glass. The room fell silent. All eyes turned to Edna. The old Edna might have lashed out. Humiliated Sandra publicly. asserted her power. But the new Edna simply smiled. When the meeting ended, she called Sandra aside privately. In her office, Edna offered her a cup of tea. Sandra was tense, expecting a scolding. Instead, Edna spoke gently. "Sandra," she began, "I see a lot of my old self in you." Sandra blinked, confused. "I know what it feels like to be brilliant, and to think it's enough." Edna's voice was soft but firm. "But brilliance without humility is a disaster waiting to happen. I was once where you are. I lost good people. I lost their trust. I almost lost myself." She leaned forward. "Leadership isn't proven by titles or loudness. It's proven by how you lift those around you. When you make others feel seen, respected, valued, you build loyalty. And loyalty will take you places talent alone never can." For the first time, Sandra's confidence wavered. She lowered her eyes. I didn't know, Ma," she whispered. Edna smiled. "You know now. And you have a choice, be a boss to be feared, or be a leader to be respected." Edna handed Sandra a small card. On it was written a single word, "Grace." From that day, Sandra changed. Slowly, painfully, but truly. She began listening more. Apologizing when she was wrong. Praising her team openly. And she wasn't the only one. Thomas, the arrogant accountant who once ignored everyone below him, began mentoring new interns. Miss Bimp, the once snobbish HR head, now organized monthly team bonding events, opening her home to everyone. And it all flowed from Edna's example. She never preached. She simply lived differently, and others followed. One afternoon, at a company conference meeting, the entire staff stood to their feet, unplanned, and gave Edna a standing ovation. Tears filled her eyes as she looked across the room, not at the polished furniture, not at the impressive charts, but at the smiling, changed faces before her. She realized. This was the real company her father dreamed of. A place where people grew, not just profits. A place where brokenness was healed with patience. A place where grace wasn't just spoken, it was lived. 1 year later, the Edna Legacy Academy opened its doors. Children ran across the bright green fields. Laughter and music filled the air. Dignitaries and journalists attended. Miss Edna stood proudly at the entrance, a golden ribbon in her hand. Beside her stood Miss Peace, now her closest friend and chief operations officer. As Edna cut the ribbon, she felt something warm wash over her. Her parents would have been proud. She had fallen once. Hard. But she rose again, stronger, kinder, better. And this time, her beauty was the kind that never faded. The kind that changed lives. The morning felt ordinary, but something was different. Edna walked into the office, greeted by warm smiles as usual. But there was a certain buzz in the air. A hushed excitement. Whispers that stopped when she entered the office. By noon, her PA, Miss Peace, handed her a formal-looking envelope. "Ma, please come to the conference room at 2 p.m. The staffs would love to brief you on something." She raised an eyebrow but nodded. "All right." At exactly 2 p.m., Edna pushed open the glass doors of the conference room. She froze. The entire staff was there, standing. The room was decorated with soft ribbons, a banner stretched across the wall. "Thank you, Miss Edna, for leading with grace." She put a hand to her mouth, stunned. Then Sandra, the once proud marketing manager now humbled and grown, stepped forward with a plaque in her hands. Tears welled in her eyes as she spoke. "More months ago, I walked in your footsteps, but not the right ones. You could have crushed me. Instead, you taught me." The room was silent, hanging on her words. "You showed me that greatness is not in how loud we are, but in how deeply we care. You taught me how to be a leader, not a boss. And not just me, all of us. She turned to the staff. Am I right? A chorus of voices echoed, yes. Your example has changed this place. And changed us. Sandra walked forward and handed the plaque to Edna. It read, to Miss Edna, a leader who taught us to rise by lifting others. Thank you for giving us grace, and teaching us to give it too. Edna was speechless. Her hands trembled. Slowly, she looked around the room, at Thomas, at Bimp, at the interns, at the cleaners who now stood shoulder to shoulder with executives, all clapping, some wiping tears. She didn't speak for a long moment. Then, quietly, I didn't set out to change you all. I just didn't want to lose myself again. But if my journey helped you find yours, then I thank God. The clapping grew louder. It turned into a standing ovation. For the second time, Edna wept, not from guilt or regret, but from overwhelming joy. This time, she wasn't falling. She was being lifted. By the very people she once overlooked. Edna became a motivational speaker. Churches, organizations, companies invite her to speak in their meetings, encouraging staffs with unholy attitudes to embrace friendliness in discharge of duties, to ensure personal and organizational growth. Edna's transformation became a tale that was told by parents to guide children with negative attitudes. I appreciate you for staying till the end with me. See you in my next episode.